What is going on, All-Stars? Today we are talking about how to play Clash and how to actually win. First, we need to familiarize ourselves with the map. You have 2 lanes on each side. At the top of the lane, you have a tier 1 tower. Behind that, we have a Phoenix, which will then lead to the Titan. In the center, you have a damage camp that at the 10-minute mark will evolve to an Apophis. On each side of the tier 1 towers, you will see there is a mana camp. And then there is another mana camp directly centered on your side of the jungle. The overall objective is to push each tower, capture them and destroy them, as well as destroy each enemy, or at least one of the enemy's Phoenix, and then destroy the Titan. That is how you win the game, but how you do it is how you succeed. Let's start off with everyone's favorite topic, warding. There are 6 locations on this map that must be warded. There is no exceptions, you will need vision, and it is relatively cheap and relatively easy to ensure that you always have vision for your team. The first thing to know is the reasons why we're going to ward. 1, besides it being relatively cheap and easy, it is also easy to gank your lane. We'll start from the top down. If you're pressing the enemy's lane, you can be attacked through their jungle or through the center camp. If you're in your lane, you can be ganked through the center camp, or at worst case scenario, someone comes from behind you through your tower gank lane and gets you there. When you're in your tower, you can still be tower dove ganked through that lane. So what we want to do is make sure that at the start of the match, we ward the center camp. This is the most important because early on in the match, you will see lots of rotations coming from each team. If you have a ward and the enemy team does not, you have an advantage. You know when they're there, and you know when to either fall back to your tower or when you can press up and force the lane into their tower. Now, defensively speaking, you generally do not have to ward your tower gank lane until your tower's down. Then it is necessary to ward there. You also generally don't have to ward the tower gank lane on your enemy's tower until you take their tower and are pressing their Phoenix. If either of those towers, either yours or your enemy's team's down, please be sure to ward your tower lane. In the event that you guys are now defending your Phoenixes, there is a final location right between your Phoenixes, and you will also see it on the enemy side or right between their Phoenixes, that generally can be warded, but isn't necessarily going to help you too much. Generally speaking, you'll want to ward your Phoenix lane as opposed to the enemy's lane, just knowing that you don't want to lose your Phoenix just because you don't have vision. It's 50 gold, it's worth not losing the game over. Now let's talk about team composition. Now, because Clash has 2 individual lanes that are not easy to gank, mages are going to be extra strong. You would want 1 mage in each lane. It's important to apply pressure in each lane, as well as be able to defend the enemy team's pressure in your lane. The first team comp that will work is going to have 1 guardian, 1 warrior, 1 hunter, and 2 mages. And what will happen is the warrior, the guardian, and the hunter will generally take 1 lane or the other. They might begin to start cycling back and forth in unison together as a small horde, pushing the pressure up on 1 lane or pushing the pressure up on another. Since they will be doing most of the rotating, it will also most likely be their responsibility to ensure that that center camp, at least early on, is warded. Another comp that can work is going to involve 1 guardian, 1 warrior, 1 mage, and 2 hunters. Now, it's important when picking this comp that you pick 2 hunters that also have decent lane pressure and clear. Otherwise, you will lose out if the other team has a lot more lane pressure and clear to you, and you'll end up in the defensive position early on, and we generally don't want this. We want to be able to force the pressure and control the rotations through that center camp. And if you do go the route of double hunter, you will struggle a little bit, so it's important that all your hunters, if you go this route, have the ability to clear that lane without help. The last and final comp that could work for you does involve one guardian, 2 mages, 1 hunter, and 1 assassin. It's important to distinguish here, though, that unless your team gets ahead, the assassin will struggle until the late game. The reason being is that you're going to lose lane pressure, and losing lane pressure now limits your ganking potential. If you do not have the ability to surprise the enemy, you're going to struggle because it's really easy to ward you. If you're able to get an early tower, you now have 2 more gank options that allow you to succeed. Generally, you should avoid playing an assassin in Clash, but if you do choose to go there, make sure that you're playing with a team that has 2 mages that will definitely push that lane up towards the enemy's tower for you. Now let's talk some tactics. Early on, you'll find that most people will converge around that center camp, wanting to contest the damage buff early on. Whether or not this makes most sense really depends, but it's where 99% of the time, at least I personally, and probably most of you listening, have seen the game start at. Now, it is important to know that if you lose this exchange, there's a good chance that 1, you lose a person on your team, and now you have a death. You give up first blood and you put your whole team behind, because chances are that whole enemy team now just all got an assist and bonus gold. Worst case scenario, you also will then lose early game lane pressure, and now the enemy team is able to rotate free of will. Another option that I think would make much more sense, but no one seems to have sense to do, would be to start early and get both your mages their mana buff. This will give them an extra cooldown and ensure that they have mana to out-sustain their opponent in the lane. This means that you have the best chance to maintain either lane pressure or win the lane. Now, what that means is that around mid-game, you'll have the upper hand, chances are. Whether or not that happens, I mean, there's a lot more things that could dictate the outcome, but it gives you a great option. Likely then, you can become the first team to take down the first tower. This then allows your rotations to take a lot bigger effect. Your warrior, your assassin, your guardian can now start using that tower gank lane. And if that's the case, you're welcome. You can now easily get that other tower. And you go from there. Now, after you do get the towers, it's important that you move up the lane in that one that you've just captured. Generally, you don't want your guardian, your warrior, your assassin doing that until you take down the other tower. If both towers are down, you now want whoever can rotate the fastest over to that lane and then rotate back into the main push lane. This is a tactic called split pushing. Split pushing is very, very successful in Clash and will yield you a win almost every time if you pull it off successfully. Now, if you are the person that's in the lane split pushing, remember that after you do push that lane up, it's important that you join your team in the main push lane. A split push is only good if you're able to capture that lane. You just want to keep pressure in both lanes. Doesn't matter whether or not you capture it. If you're able to get both, awesome. If your team wins the other lane without you while you're doing the split push, keep the push going. Just remember, it's important that you don't let your team get into a 4v5 in the main push lane. That's going to do it for this one, All-Stars. The Clash Guide is wrapping up. If you have any comments, want to make any contributions, leave it down in the comments. Of course, if you enjoyed it, appreciate it, hit the like, hit the subscribe for more. And if you're still watching, check up in the top corner. There's another video. It's going to be the Clash tier list. I'm going to do a much further in-depth discussion. It's coming out the same day as this video, so just click it. You know you want to. Do it. Have fun.